She didn't cry. Not when her 9-year-old ran from the living room with tears streaming down her cheeks. Not when her parents leaned back on the couch with smug smiles, as if they had said nothing wrong. But inside, something cracked and then ignited. The words that caused it all? "We wish your sister's kids were our only grandkids," said right in front of her daughter. 9 years old. Small shoulders, big heart, and in one careless sentence, crushed like paper in a fist, you'd think grandparents, those soft, cookie-baking, Christmas card-writing elders, would know better. But sometimes, family delivers the deepest wounds. Meet Rachel, 38, single mom, works harder than 2 people combined and yet always feels like she's one step behind. She thought she had mastered the art of swallowing her pride, of smiling through subtle digs at family dinners, of brushing off favoritism with, "It's fine, it doesn't matter." But this wasn't fine. Not when a child's self-worth was tossed aside like leftovers nobody wanted to reheat. Now here's the part you'll want to stick around for. 3 days after that little family gathering, her parents' perfect world began unraveling. And guess what? Rachel didn't lift a finger. But before we talk about how karma RSVP'd to that dinner party, let's rewind. Because stories like this don't just fall out of the sky. They're built, piece by piece, scar by scar, sacrifice by sacrifice. Who was Rachel before the tears, before the silence, before the fire inside her chest? How did she go from a girl chasing approval to a woman watching her parents' lives fall apart? And most importantly, what did she do in those 3 days that changed everything? If you think this is just about hurt feelings, think again. This is about respect, dignity, and a quiet strength that people underestimate, until it shows up like a storm. So buckle up. We're about to dig into a story of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. A story that proves silence is not weakness, it's strategy. And trust me, by the end, you'll never look at family loyalty the same way again. Welcome, story lovers. From where are you watching? Drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. Rachel wasn't always the woman who kept her emotions locked behind a polite smile. She wasn't always the mother who quietly tucked in her daughter at night while wondering how she would stretch the grocery budget until payday. No, Rachel had once been a dreamer, loud, ambitious, and hungry for life. She grew up in a small Midwestern town where Friday night football was religion and everyone knew each other's business before the church service on Sunday. Her parents were what you'd call respectable, not wealthy, but comfortable. They worked hard, believed in appearances, and loved the idea of being admired by neighbors. To them, family image mattered more than family feelings. And Rachel, she was the golden child once. A straight-A student who stayed late in the library, who lit up when talking about books, who once stood on her high school stage and declared she'd become a lawyer. She wanted to fight for justice, to stand up for the voices that never got heard. People clapped, her teachers praised her, and even her parents wore proud smiles that day. But dreams have a fragile shelf life when they're born in families that measure worth in comparisons. Her younger sister Amanda was different. Charming, carefree, and the kind of person who could fail a test on Friday and still get a car for her birthday on Saturday. Rachel watched as her parents excused Amanda's recklessness with laughter, while her own achievements were brushed off as what we expect from you. And maybe that was the beginning of the quiet fracture, the invisible line between being appreciated and being taken for granted. Still, Rachel pressed forward. She earned a scholarship, went off to college, and for a while, it felt like her life was aligning with her dreams. She studied political science, joined debate teams, interned at a local law office. The world seemed wide open. Then came Michael, the kind of man who swept her off her feet with quick wit and promises of a forever she didn't realize was conditional. She was young, hopeful, and ready to believe in happy endings. Within 2 years, they were married, and by 28, she had a baby girl, the light of her life. But motherhood, as much joy as it brought, also shifted the ground beneath her. Bills piled up. Her law school plans went on pause. Michael's charm faded into restlessness. He started spending more nights out, less time at home. Until one morning, he simply announced he wasn't cut out for family life. And just like that, He left. No note, no second chances, just a bank account drained and a lease in Rachel's name. She cried for one night. Just one. After that, survival mode kicked in. Rachel worked 2 jobs, waitressing during the day, stocking shelves overnight. She learned to stretch $40 into a week's worth of meals. She memorized every discount day at the local grocery store. Her daughter never knew hunger, never saw the fear in her mother's eyes when the rent notice came, because Rachel made sure of it. The hardest part wasn't the exhaustion, it was the silence. No phone call from her parents asking how she was holding up. No offers of help beyond the occasional, "Well, Amanda and her husband are doing so well, maybe you should learn from them." Imagine that. A daughter raising a child alone, scraping pennies together, while her parents sent care packages across town to Amanda's family, just because they liked the idea of supporting their shining star. Still, Rachel didn't complain. Complaining felt like weakness, and weakness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she found small acts of survival. She clipped coupons like it was an Olympic sport. She patched her daughter's shoes with super glue and made bedtime stories out of secondhand library books. She skipped dinners so her daughter could drink milk and fall asleep full. And here's the thing, she never let her daughter feel the weight of it. To her little girl, life was stable, warm, and filled with love. Because Rachel's sacrifices were invisible, as they were meant to be. But at night, after the dishes were washed and her daughter was asleep, Rachel would sometimes sit in the quiet and let herself wonder. She would look at the framed picture of her college days, the girl with big dreams and bigger courage, and ask, where did she go? She had buried that girl under bills, responsibilities, and heartbreak. But deep down, the fire never went out. It smoldered quietly, waiting. Her parents never saw the strength it took to hold it all together. They only saw the surface, a single mom who didn't measure up to their perfect Amanda. They praised her sister's holidays in Hawaii, her new cars, her spotless house. They ignored the woman in front of them who carried dignity on her shoulders like armor. And the irony, Rachel was too tired to resent it. At least until that afternoon when their words, "We wish your sister's kids were our only grandkids," landed like a bomb in her living room. That was the moment everything shifted. Because while Rachel had been surviving for years, this was different. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about her daughter, the child she had fought for, sacrificed for, built her life around. It's one thing to overlook a mother. It's another to break a child. And for Rachel, that was the line, a line her parents never saw coming. Rachel thought she knew what survival looked like. She thought she had seen every shade of exhaustion, every flavor of disappointment, every version of keeping her head down and moving forward. But nothing prepared her for the moment she realized that silence, the tool she had relied on for years, could also become her sharpest weapon. It started small. 3 days after her parents' cutting words, Rachel was still replaying the scene in her head. The way her daughter's face crumpled, the way tiny feet slapped down the hallway as she ran to her room, the way Rachel's mother smirked as if to say, "We spoke the truth. What's the harm?" But the harm was everywhere. Her daughter wouldn't come out of her room that evening. She wouldn't eat dinner, wouldn't look at Rachel in the eye. Instead, she whispered, "Am I not good enough, Mommy?" That was the knife twist. Not the words themselves, but their echo inside a child's heart. Rachel stayed awake long after midnight, staring at the ceiling, her fists clenched around the blanket. For the first time, she felt something shift inside her. The old Rachel, the dreamer, the fighter, the girl who once stood on a stage declaring she'd change the world. That girl wasn't gone. She had only been waiting, and strangely enough, life sent her a sign, though not in the way she expected. It came during her morning shift at the diner. Rachel had been pouring coffee for the same group of construction workers she served every day when she overheard a conversation at the counter. One of the men was talking about his wife's company, how they were desperately searching for a reliable assistant for a small law office downtown. Someone who can handle clients, organize case files, manage the books. Not glamorous, but steady pay, he said. Rachel's ears perked up. Law office, case files. It was like hearing a whisper from her younger self. the girl who once dreamed of standing in a courtroom. She knew she couldn't step into a lawyer's shoes overnight, but maybe, just maybe, she could start walking in that direction again. That night, after putting her daughter to bed, Rachel pulled out her old laptop. The thing wheezed like a dying animal, but it powered on. She dug out her resume, long neglected, and stared at it with both pride and shame. It listed achievements that felt like another lifetime. Dean's List, student debate champion, internship at a local law firm. And then nothing. Just a blank space where the years of survival had swallowed her identity. She hesitated. Would anyone take her seriously after so many gaps? Would she even get a call back? But then she remembered her daughter's question. Am I not good enough? No, this wasn't about her anymore. This was about showing her child that worth is not defined by someone else's careless words. So she sent the email. The next morning, she got a reply. The firm wanted to interview her. It should have felt like a victory, and in a way it did. But victories rarely come without shadows. The shadow came in the form of Amanda, when Rachel casually mentioned the job interview to her parents, half hoping they'd finally offer some encouragement. They didn't smile. Instead, her mother's eyes narrowed. A law office? With your background? Don't you think that's ambitious? You've been out of the game too long, her father chuckled. Besides, Amanda's husband just got promoted again. They're thinking of buying a second house near the lake. You can't expect to compete with that. It wasn't advice. It was dismissal. A subtle reminder of where they believed Rachel belonged. In the shadows, forever one step behind her sister. But Rachel didn't argue. She simply nodded, swallowed the sting, and let their words hang in the air, because silence wasn't surrender anymore. It was storage. Every dismissive comment, every smirk, every comparison, they were kindling. And Rachel was quietly gathering every spark for the fire she knew was coming. The interview day arrived. Rachel dressed in her best blouse, one she'd ironed 3 times to make sure not a wrinkle remained. She tied her hair back, applied the faintest touch of makeup, and looked in the mirror. For the first time in years, she saw not just a tired mother, but a woman reclaiming a piece of herself. The firm was small but busy. 2 lawyers juggling more cases than they could handle, with a lobby full of anxious clients. Rachel sat across from the senior partner, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s named Ellen. The questions came fast. Could she manage deadlines? Could she handle confidential information? Could she think critically under pressure? And here's where Rachel surprised even herself. She didn't stammer or shrink. She answered with calm authority, weaving her survival skills into professional strengths. I know what it's like to manage more than seems possible. I've balanced 2 jobs, cared for a child, and never missed a bill. I know how to stay organized when life feels chaotic. By the end of the interview, Ellen leaned back, impressed. You don't have traditional experience, she admitted, but you have grit. And grit gets more done than fancy degrees. Rachel walked out with a job offer. It should have been pure triumph. But life has a way of testing resolve just when hope appears. Her parents didn't congratulate her. When she shared the news, her mother shrugged. Well, let's hope you don't embarrass yourself. The legal field is demanding, her father smirked. Amanda says you should be grateful. Not everyone can start over at your age. And Amanda herself? She sent a text. Congrats, I guess. Just don't expect mom and dad to babysit all the time. They're busy with my kids. It stung, of course. But for the first time, Rachel didn't let the sting sink deep. She tucked it away, knowing that every dismissal, every jab, was about to boomerang back. Because life was aligning in strange, almost poetic ways. Within days of starting the new job, Rachel stumbled across something she wasn't supposed to see, a stack of misfiled papers that hinted at financial irregularities in one of the firm's major cases. She wasn't sure yet what it meant, but one thing was clear. If she followed the thread, it could unravel secrets big enough to change not just her life, but her parents' precious, perfect world. For the first time in years, Rachel wasn't just surviving. She was holding a match, and the kindling was ready. The thing about carrying quiet strength is that people mistake it for weakness. They assume your silence means you've accepted your place, that you'll keep your head down forever. Rachel had lived in that shadow for years, until the day she walked into the law office's conference room with shaking hands and steady eyes. The discovery had landed in her lap almost by accident. A stack of files misfiled in the cabinet, an extra zero where it didn't belong, a trail of numbers that whispered something foul. Rachel wasn't an accountant, but she had spent nights balancing her own survival like an Olympic routine. Rent, food, utilities, always within $1. Numbers didn't lie to her, and these numbers were screaming. At first, she thought maybe it was a mistake. But the deeper she dug, the clearer it became. Someone was siphoning money. Not small amounts either. Hundreds of thousands routed through dummy accounts, hidden beneath jargon and clerical adjustments. It wasn't just fraud. It was deliberate theft. She knew the risks of speaking up. She was new, unproven, easily dismissed. If she raised a finger, she could lose the job she'd just fought to earn. But then she thought of her daughter. Of her parents' smug faces as they praised Amanda's family while belittling her own child. Of that sentence that had cut her daughter to the core. "We wish your sister's kids were our only grandkids." This wasn't just about money. It was about truth. And Rachel was done being invisible. The opportunity came during a Friday meeting. The senior partner, Ellen, had invited key clients, junior staff, and both firm partners. The air smelled of power and coffee, the kind of atmosphere Rachel used to dream about. She stood by the wall taking notes unnoticed. Just the assistant, just background noise, until the CFO of the client company barked, "Excuse me, this meeting is closed. Who let the assistant in?" The room chuckled politely. A few smirks, a few dismissive glances. Rachel's cheeks burned, but she didn't flinch. Not this time. She stepped forward, a slim folder in her hand. "You might want to keep me in the room," the CFO laughed. "And why's that?" "Going to teach us how to balance our checkbooks." More chuckles. More dismissal. Rachel placed the folder on the table. Calm, measured. Her voice cut through the laughter. "This is your missing $780,000. And before you ask, yes, the IRS, the State Bar, and Channel 7 already have copies." The silence was instant, thick, heavy. Ellen's eyes widened. She reached for the folder, flipping through the highlighted documents, the printouts, the meticulous notes Rachel had compiled. Her hands shook. "This can't be right," muttered one of the junior lawyers. Rachel met his gaze, steady. "It is. I double-checked everything. And before anyone suggests I don't know what I'm talking about, I learned how to survive on pennies. Numbers don't lie to me?" The CFO went pale. The senior partner's jaw locked. And slowly the room turned, clients glaring at executives stammering, Ellen gripping the papers like a lifeline. Rachel took a step back. "I'll let you finish your meeting. Just thought you'd want to know before the cameras show up." And then she walked out. Head high, shoulders square. Not running, not shrinking. That was the moment. The day the assistant, nobody took seriously, became the most powerful person in the room. But here's the twist. Rachel didn't do it for herself. She didn't do it for applause or revenge. She did it because she knew her daughter was watching how her mother responded to disrespect, to dismissal, to being treated as less than. Watching what it means to rise, not with anger, but with truth. When she got home that evening, her daughter ran to her, eyes wide. "Mommy, you look different." Rachel smiled, brushing the girl's hair from her face. "That's because I remembered who I am." Meanwhile, the fallout was immediate. Within hours, news outlets were calling. Investigations were launched. The very executives who had smirked at Rachel were now scrambling for lawyers, begging for silence. And back at home, Rachel's parents were forced to see the headlines, too. Their quiet, overlooked daughter, the one they dismissed as not good enough, was suddenly the name on every screen. The woman who had uncovered fraud. The assistant who brought down giants. The mother who refused to be small anymore. And that right there was her breaking point. Not the humiliation. Not the dismissal. The breaking point was realizing she didn't need her parents' approval. She had built her own. The Rachel who once cried into her pillow was gone. The Rachel who rose in silence had arrived. Dear audience, if you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps more people discover these powerful stories. When the dust settled, Rachel was no longer just an assistant. She was the woman who exposed corruption, who forced powerful men to answer for their greed. The story made headlines for weeks. Single mother uncovers massive corporate fraud. Her photo, once overlooked, was splashed across newspapers. The law firm offered her a permanent position, with a generous salary and full benefits. It was the kind of offer people like her rarely saw, but Rachel didn't hesitate. She turned it down. She wasn't interested in trading one cage for another, no matter how gilded. Instead, she took the whistleblower settlement, a sum larger than she'd ever imagined. For the first time in her life, she didn't have to worry about rent, groceries, or overdue bills. She could breathe. She could plan. She could dream. And she knew exactly what she wanted to do. Rachel opened her own small consulting firm, one dedicated to financial ethics, fraud detection, and most importantly, giving opportunities to women like herself. She rented a modest office, painted it herself, and hung a simple sign: TruthWorks Consulting. At first, it was just her and a borrowed laptop. But word spread quickly. Corporations who had once overlooked her were now seeking her expertise. She didn't flaunt her success, but she set one boundary. She chose her clients. If a company had a history of exploiting workers or hiding behind loopholes, she walked away. Her daughter would sometimes visit after school, doing homework at a desk in the corner. She would watch her mother lead meetings, answer questions, and speak with the kind of authority Rachel once thought belonged only to others. "Mom," she whispered one evening. "You're like the boss now." Rachel smiled. "No, sweetheart. I'm not the boss. I'm my own boss." And that was the difference. Her parents, of course, couldn't ignore what had happened. At first, they were silent. Then came the awkward phone calls, the hesitant invitations to dinner, the backhanded compliments. "We always knew you had potential." Rachel didn't need their approval anymore. She attended family gatherings, but not with bowed head or anxious silence. She carried herself with quiet pride, the kind born not from